A routine police arrest almost caught a secret CIA agent right in the middle of a mission? The cops didn't know who he really was. But minutes later, the truth shocked everyone and changed everything. It all started on a busy Tuesday afternoon in downtown Washington, D.C., where the city hummed with its usual blend of rushing workers, tourists snapping photos, and the distant sounds of traffic. The government district was always bustling, and security was tight, especially near the big federal buildings that dotted the area. On this particular day, police officers were on high alert after receiving an anonymous tip about a suspicious man seen lingering near one of these sensitive government sites. According to the reports, the man had been spotted several times over the past few hours, pacing back and forth but never fully entering the building. What caught attention was his unusual behavior. Calm, composed, yet strangely distant, as if he was watching everything but not really interacting with anyone. He was described as a well-dressed black man in his mid-30s, wearing a tailored blazer and dark sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. The officers were told he didn't seem to be a threat at first glance, but something about his presence felt off. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact, or the fact that no one seemed to know who he was. Police cars quietly moved closer, and two officers approached the man on foot, their badges shining under the afternoon sun. The man didn't make any sudden moves. Instead, he stood still, hands relaxed by his sides, maintaining that calm, almost unreadable expression. The officers introduced themselves and politely asked him for identification, explaining the reason for the check. Security concerns in such a sensitive area were not taken lightly. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out an ID. But it wasn't an ordinary driver's license or state ID. It was a government-issued badge, but it didn't say police or federal agent as one might expect. The officers exchanged curious glances as they examined the credentials. They recognized the emblem. It belonged to the CIA. Confusion flashed across their faces. Why was a CIA agent acting so strangely in public? Why hadn't anyone warned local police about his presence or mission? The officers radioed their precinct, requesting backup and verification. Minutes passed and the tension grew. The man, who introduced himself as Marcus Jackson, remained composed, answering questions calmly but not revealing much. His demeanor was professional and alert, as if he knew more than he was letting on. The officers couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an ordinary person caught in a misunderstanding. Suddenly, one of the officers' radios crackled. To life with an urgent message from a CIA liaison officer. Hold your position. The individual you have in custody is an active undercover CIA operative on a sensitive mission. Do not proceed with arrest or detain him further. The room seemed to stop for a moment. The officers looked at Marcus, then at each other, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. They had almost arrested one of the government's top covert agents, someone who had spent years deep undercover, infiltrating dangerous criminal organizations to protect national security. The lead officer quickly apologized for the misunderstanding, and Marcus nodded, understanding the complexities of such a situation. He knew that in his line of work, incidents like this could happen. Local law enforcement wasn't always fully informed about undercover operations for security reasons. But the experience was a sharp reminder of how fragile undercover work could be, balanced on a knife's edge between exposure and secrecy. As Marcus walked away from the scene, blending back into the city crowd, the police officers remained stunned. They had just witnessed firsthand the hidden world of espionage and the risks agents like Marcus faced daily. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It was a glimpse into the secret lives of those who protect us from threats we never see. Word of the incident quickly spread through the precinct and beyond, sparking debates about communication gaps between federal agencies and local law enforcement. How could such a critical mission almost be compromised? Was it a failure of protocol or simply an unavoidable risk of undercover operations? Meanwhile, Marcus continued his mission with even greater caution, knowing that any slip-up could have serious consequences, not just for him, but for the entire operation. This encounter was a powerful reminder that sometimes the most ordinary scenes in a city can hide extraordinary stories. Beneath the surface of daily life, heroes like Marcus worked tirelessly in the shadows, facing danger and uncertainty to keep the nation safe. The man's name was Marcus Jackson, a seasoned CIA operative who had spent years working deep undercover in some of the most dangerous and complex operations imaginable. Marcus wasn't just any agent. He was one of the CIA's best, trusted with missions that required him to blend seamlessly into hostile environments and gather intelligence crucial for national security. Over time, he had built a reputation for his calm under pressure, sharp instincts, and ability to move undetected in the shadows. But Marcus's work was never easy. For years, he had infiltrated criminal networks involved in drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and human trafficking, organizations that operated with ruthless efficiency across borders and continents. Every day in the field carried risks, not just from criminals, but from the possibility of exposure, which could endanger his life and the success of his mission. On this particular day, Marcus was in Washington, D.C., carrying out one of his most sensitive assignments yet. His mission was to surveil a group believed to be linked to an international smuggling ring that was smuggling weapons and contraband into the United States. The group was dangerous, well-organized, and deeply embedded in the city's underworld. Marcus's job was to observe, gather intelligence, and report back so that federal agencies could act when the time was right. To maintain his cover, Marcus dressed casually, wearing a simple jacket and jeans, blending effortlessly with the lunchtime crowd flooding the sidewalks. His appearance was unremarkable by design. He never wanted to draw attention. He moved with purpose, always alert, constantly scanning his surroundings for any sign of threat or opportunity. Despite his careful efforts to remain unnoticed, Marcus's presence somehow caught the attention of local police officers patrolling nearby. The officers had been briefed to watch for suspicious activity around government buildings, especially after recent alerts about possible threats in the area. Marcus's calm but watchful demeanor, along with his movement near a high-security zone, raised red flags. The officers approached him cautiously, following their standard protocol. From their perspective, they were simply investigating a man who fit the description of someone acting strangely near a sensitive site. They didn't know who Marcus really was, that he was an undercover CIA agent, and in their eyes, this was a routine stop to check identification and ensure public safety. Marcus knew the moment could be dangerous. As the officers asked for his ID, he calmly produced a form of identification that was not what they expected. A CIA badge, but one that few outside the intelligence community would immediately recognize or understand. The agents were trained to keep their identities secret, even from other government officials when possible, to protect both themselves and their operations. But the officers were acting based on procedure. Without full knowledge of his identity or mission, they moved to arrest him for further questioning. For Marcus, compliance was the only option. Any resistance could have escalated the situation, risking his cover and possibly triggering a chain of events that would jeopardize the entire operation. He didn't struggle. He didn't argue. Marcus remained composed, answering questions carefully and clearly while knowing every second counted. His mind raced, calculating the best way to de-escalate the situation without blowing his cover or causing confusion. The arrest attempt was a tense moment, a clash between two sides of law enforcement unaware of each other's roles. The local police were doing their job, following protocol to keep the city safe. Marcus was doing his, working undercover to dismantle a dangerous criminal network. Yet, neither side had been informed about the other, which created a perfect storm of misunderstanding. As the situation unfolded, Marcus's training kicked in. He knew how to maintain his calm, how to keep his story consistent, and most importantly, how to avoid drawing more attention. He remained silent about his real mission, knowing that revealing too much would be a risk. Instead, he trusted that higher authorities would soon intervene to clarify the confusion. The officers held him briefly, awaiting confirmation from their superiors. Meanwhile, Marcus kept his cool, aware that the seconds felt like hours. This was a reminder of the thin line undercover operatives walk every day, balancing secrecy with the risk of exposure and always prepared to adapt to unexpected challenges. The moment was about to shift dramatically when a radio message came through. The kind of message that changed everything. Just as the officers were about to handcuff Marcus, the tension in the air was palpable. The crisp click of metal cuffs seemed inevitable. But then, suddenly, a sharp crackle broke through the radio in one officer's hand. The voice on the other end was urgent, clipped, and unmistakable. It was the CIA liaison. "Hold your position." "This is not a routine arrest," the voice commanded. "The man in custody is Marcus Jackson, an undercover CIA operative on a sensitive mission. Do not detain him further. Repeat, do not detain." Time seemed to freeze. The officers exchanged bewildered glances, the weight of the revelation sinking in instantly. They had come face to face with a man whose very existence was meant to remain hidden. Marcus Jackson was not just any suspect. He was one of their nation's covert protectors, operating in the shadows to safeguard countless lives. For a moment, the officers stood in stunned silence, the gravity of the near mistake washing over them. The reality hit hard. They had nearly arrested a vital intelligence asset, a man risking his life every day in secret, far beyond the understanding of most citizens and even many in law enforcement. The lead officer quickly lowered his hand, stepping back from Marcus with a mixture of relief and respect. "We apologize, Agent Jackson," he said, his voice steady but respectful. "We had no idea. This was a misunderstanding." Marcus nodded calmly, showing no sign of irritation or frustration. Years of training had taught him patience and discretion, and he knew these situations were just part of the dangerous world he operated in. "It's okay," Marcus replied quietly. "I understand the need for caution. No harm done." The officers immediately radioed in to confirm the update, and within minutes, the tension melted away. Marcus was released on the spot, the officers ensuring he was free to resume his mission without further interference. Yet as Marcus disappeared back into the city crowd, the officers were left reflecting on the thin line between security and secrecy. This moment would be remembered not just for the near arrest, but for the incredible complexity and risk of undercover operations. The police had done their duty, following protocol and protecting the public. But it also exposed the challenges intelligence agencies face when their operatives blend into the very environment they're trying to protect. Little. Did anyone know the story was far from over? Word of the incident spread like wildfire. What started as a quiet afternoon encounter quickly exploded into a full-blown media frenzy. Within hours, social media platforms were flooded with videos, eyewitness accounts, and heated debates. Smartphones had captured parts of the tense attempt, and those clips circulated endlessly, sparking curiosity and controversy. On Twitter, hashtags like #Undercover CIA and #Wrong Arrest trended nationally. People from all walks of life weighed in, some expressing outrage, others offering support, and many simply amazed by the unexpected revelation that a CIA agent had almost been arrested by local police. The central question on everyone's mind was simple but complex. Should the police have been informed about Marcus's covert mission in advance, or was this a failure of communication between federal agencies and local law enforcement? Some argued that the police had every right to act based on the information available to them, stressing that public safety must always come first. Others believed this incident exposed a dangerous disconnect, one that could jeopardize national security and the safety of undercover operatives. Many praised the police for following procedure, highlighting that they did what any responsible officer would do when faced with a suspicious individual near a sensitive government site. "They acted correctly and professionally," said one former police chief in a televised interview. "You can't expect officers to guess someone's true identity or mission, especially when lives could be at stake." However, the story also brought attention to the invisible risks that undercover agents like Marcus face every day. These operatives live double lives, balancing secrecy and danger, often without the support or recognition they deserve, sometimes even from other branches of their own government. Security experts weighed in, discussing how such coordination failures, while rare, are not unheard of. "Undercover work is inherently risky," said a former intelligence official. "There's always a chance that an operative's cover could be blown, not just by the enemies they're targeting, but by innocent misunderstandings or gaps in communication." News outlets quickly picked up the story, making Marcus a viral sensation overnight. Headlines screamed about the CIA agent almost arrested by police and secret mission exposed in public. Interviews with law enforcement experts, intelligence analysts, and legal commentators flooded airwaves and online news portals. But despite the sudden fame, Marcus himself remained a ghost behind the scenes. Known for his discretion and professionalism, he maintained a low profile, refusing interviews or public appearances. His focus stayed firmly on the mission at hand, understanding that while the world was now watching, the real work was far from over. Behind closed doors, discussions between the CIA, FBI, and local police departments began. Officials reviewed protocols and communication channels, seeking ways to prevent similar incidents in the future. The incident became a case study in the delicate balance between secrecy and security. For the public, the story was a window into a world they rarely saw, the shadowy and high-stakes realm of espionage where identities are hidden and danger lurks in everyday places. It was a reminder that sometimes heroes walk among us unseen, operating in silence to protect the nation. The viral nature of the event also sparked broader conversations about trust, transparency, and the challenges faced by law enforcement in a rapidly changing security landscape. People debated how to balance civil liberties with security needs, how agencies could better cooperate, and what measures could be taken to protect undercover agents without compromising their missions. As days passed, the story settled from a breaking news sensation into a lasting example of how complex and interconnected modern security efforts really are. Marcus continued his work, undeterred by the brief spotlight, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever. In the end, the incident became more than just a near arrest. It became a powerful lesson in trust, communication, and the unseen battles fought every day to keep us all safe.